Hello all and welcome to our podcast where we deep dive into fascinating world of energy geopolitics and shipping dynamics. I'm Shruti, your host, and today we have Sandesh joining us. Sandesh, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Shruti. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to discuss some of the pressing issues shaping the energy and shipping industries today.
All right then. To begin with, let's discuss Russia's LNG exports, particularly the Arctic LNG 2 project. So Sandesh, how are sanctions shaping its operations?
Shruti, sanctions have significantly reshaped Russia's LNG operations, and it was specifically in the context of Arctic LNG 2 project because since the invasion of Ukraine nearly 3 years ago, we have Russia who has faced some of the unprecedented disruption in its energy markets. So the sanctions, those are imposed by Western forces, they have forced Russia to pivot its strategies, and it was particularly in how it exports LNG. The most notable shift has been reliance on shadow fleets, and those are the vessels that operate outside the international regulatory framework, and they were transporting LNG. So this tactic that has allowed Russia to bypass some of the Western sanctions, but then it comes with risk, and it includes potential for more logistical challenges, higher insurance cost, and they are in the constant threat of further sanctions targeting these alternative fleets. And another point is that Russia has adopted discounting pricing strategies, and they have done it to maintain their LNG market share, particularly in Asia. So countries like China and India, which have become increasingly important markets for Russian LNG, so they benefit from these lower prices. And there was a pricing strategy part of some of the broader effort to maintain the economic viability of Russia's energy export. And it was despite reduced demand in Europe. So it was historically its largest market, and now that market has gone. So ultimately, they have to look for countries like China and India who are buyers of global energy. At the same time, by offering more attractive prices, Russia hopes to secure long-term contracts with Asian countries, and they are now becoming more central to its energy export strategy. So overall, they have a pricing strategy. They are using shadow fleets, but challenges are there. And despite these challenges, Russia remains determined to expand its LNG market share because they don't have any option right now. And LNG has become a critical part of Russia's economy, specifically as its natural gas exports to Europe have plummeted. So the Arctic LNG 2 project, which aims to produce LNG from the Yamal Peninsula in the Arctic. So it was a prime example of this determination, and because this project is designed to tap into the vast reserves of natural gas in the Arctic, and its completion is crucial for Russia because they want to maintain the status as a major global LNG exporter. And at this particular time, we know that US is one of the largest LNG exporter. So they want to compete with them, and they want to be a global leader in the LNG exports. But on the other side, the geopolitical shift, those resulting from the Ukraine war, it has altered the global gas market in a ways that Russia could not have anticipated. And the loss of influence in Europe, where it once held a significant sway over energy supplies, has been a major blow because the rise of US as a dominant LNG exporter, and along with Europe's pivot to alternate energy sources. So it has forced Russia to rethink the energy strategy. This particular environment that has been there and increased in last 2-3 years, it is difficult for Russia to come back in the market unless this Arctic LNG 2 project finished. So as a result, Russia is focusing its efforts on expanding its presence in Asia because there is demand for LNG, and it is growing rapidly. On the same note, I have to explain that despite these setbacks, Russia's LNG export are showing signs of recovery. So last year in 2024, Gazprom, though they are Russia's state-owned energy giant, kind of a PSU, they saw growth in its LNG shipments to both China and Europe. And while Russia's gas shipment to Europe has declined dramatically in the aftermath of invasion, there was an unexpected increase in LNG sales to European countries in 2024. This was largely due to Europe's ongoing energy crisis, which has driven demand for alternate gas sources. So even the countries that had previously sought to reduce their dependence on Russian energy, they were forced to turn to Russian LNG as a short-term solution to their energy needs. And the situation in Ukraine has also had a broader implications for the global energy market. And the war that has disrupted, the traditional gas transport route, those are specifically going the pipelines through Ukraine. This has now stopped on the eve of New Year. But we think that this shift has created new dynamics in the global LNG market because it has forced Russia to focus more on Asian market, and the only tool they were having for Asian market is LNG. And at the same time, they were also trying to maintain a presence in Europe because they were also supplying some amount of LNG to specific European countries. So the rise in the energy prices in Europe has a kind of a profound impact on European economies, and it was specifically in countries like Germany, which had been, heavily dependent on Russian gas. So in response, some European countries have even delayed or reversed their climate change policies that includes return to the coal or going for nuclear or even for renewable energy sources. And by doing that, they sought to secure their reliable energy sources because if there is a shortage of wind and your wind farm is not producing significant renewable energy, so you have to depend on sources such as fossil fuels, then comes coal and natural gas.
Well, that was really insightful, Sandesh. So, what do you think are the long term implications of Russia's strategies for circumventing sanctions? How might these developments influence global LNG pricing and supply chains?
Shruti, the long term implications of Russia's strategies for circumventing sanctions are both kind of intriguing and troubling. For example, take Arctic LNG2 project. It is Russia's flagship project for exporting LNG, and it's national prestige project for Putin because he is determined to showcase that Western sanctions can't stop Russia. So to make this happen, Russia has created a vast network of companies and kind of vessels. They were spanning from Dubai to India, China, and even Turkey. Now, here is where it gets fascinating, Shruti, and it's a bit surreal. An Indian firm called Ocean Speedster Solution. So it plays a crucial role in its network. Officially, the company is registered to a modest apartment in Panvel near Mumbai, and this isn't your typical corporate setup. So if we know Panvel, it's hardly hour away from our office, and this particular apartment has a crayon marks on the walls and a child's bike and a pink plastic chair. So it's look like a home, and it is a home to Nikhil Ganesh Ghorpade, a photojournalist who had no prior connection to the energy industry, and he says he was persuaded by a friend to register his home address for the company. And to speak more about Ocean Speed Star, they manages a fleet of shadow vessels ferrying LNG from Russia's Arctic facility. These ships, they use techniques like spoofing, or there are some of the other mechanism also present. But this spoofing they use to fake their locations. They switch off their AIS and making it seem like they are in one place while they are secretly loading gas in the Arctic. And it doesn't stop there. Another Indian firm, Pillow Energy Cargo Shipping, they also had a similar role in managing such vessels. And like Ocean Speed Star, it's also registered to a modest apartment far from Mumbai's bustling business center. So Rishabh, who is operational specialist, he can shed some light into this.
Thank you, Sandesh, for highlighting these networks. Adding to your point, this network supports Russia's ambitions to triple its LNG exports by 2030, aiming to capture 20% of the global market, which is huge. But the competition is fierce. The US is now the world's top LNG supplier, and they are very much determined to maintain that position. The stakes are high for everyone. Russia is offering massive discounts, like up to 40%, to attract the buyers, which are especially in India, China, and other countries. But many potential customers are very much hesitant because of US sanctions and their repercussions on them. Meanwhile, time is running out for Russia. The Arctic waters will definitely soon freeze, and their shadow fleet isn't equipped to handle these icy conditions. In the short term, these efforts might give Russia some wartime revenue, but in long term, it's dicey. This approach could destabilize the LNG market, influencing pricing and disrupt all supply chains. And for India, being part of this shadow network, whether through companies like, as you mentioned, Ocean Speedstar or Pilo Energies, raises a question about the complexities of global trade and geopolitics. It's a reminder that in today's interconnected world, even a small apartment in Panvel can be at the center of a global energy showdown.
Thanks, Sandesh, for your inputs, and thanks, Rishabh, for adding on to it. And to all our audience, Rishabh is operations specialist at Saigal Seatrade. Now, let's shift our focus from Europe to the Middle East. Now, when we talk about Middle East, it's all about Qatar. And Qatar's recent threat to halt LNG supplies to the EU over new due diligence laws is another hot topic. So, what's your take on this, Sandesh?
Well, I was expecting that question, Shruti. You know, the situation with Qatar is kind of a perfect example on the ongoing tug of war between ambitious environmental policies and the practicalities of energy security. So, Qatar's threat to halt LNG supplies to the EU, it is a response to the corporate sustainability due diligence directive and is not just about economic, it's a signal. And Europe has got two signals in last 15 days. One is from Trump and another is from Qatar. And the EU's directive is designed to hold companies accountable for ethical practices and focusing on everything from environmental sustainability to labor rights. It's a notable initiative, no doubt, but here is a catch. Qatar is one of the Europe's largest LNG suppliers. It is a fact and we cannot deny that. So we are talking about a country that has invested billions into LNG infrastructure, and it includes long-term supply contracts to keep Europe's lights on and home heated. And from Qatar's perspective, the directive could be seen as overreach because imposing standards on suppliers without fully accounting for the geopolitical and operational complexity they face. And the timing of this standoff is also critical. And it is because Europe is still reeling from the aftershocks of the energy crisis. Those are triggered by the Russia-Ukraine war. You know, the Russian gas, once a cornerstone of Europe's energy mix, is no longer a reliable option right now. And this has left the EU heavily dependent on alternative suppliers like Qatar and the US and even Norway. So alienating a key partner like Qatar at such a sensitive time, it could risk destabilizing Europe's energy supply. And when we say it's all about the timing, we have to also see the climatic conditions right now, because now we all are into the winter season, and if there is a harsh winter, then it's all about Qatar's LNG. But having said that, let's not ignore Qatar's motivations here. This isn't just a defensive move, it's a calculated strategy. And why I'm saying that? Because by threatening to halt supplies, Qatar is flexing its geopolitical muscle, reminding Europe and the world of its indispensable role in the global energy markets. And it also warns the other regions that may be considering similar sustainability measures by imposing some of the new rules without collaboration could have unintended consequences. And the EU now finds itself in a very tough spot. And does it double down on its commitment to sustainability, knowing it could strain relationship with vital suppliers? Or does it compromise to ensure energy security, potentially delaying progress on its green agenda? We don't know, and we don't have an answer for that right now. And adding to that, let's not forget the broader implications. So if Qatar follows through on this thread, it could set a precedent for the other energy exporter to push back against Western regulation. So you have to focus here. For oil, we have a OPEC, but for gas, we don't have any such exporting organization because the market is still very much non-regulated when we talk about gas and LNG. And we think that this kind of a move may bring all the exporters closer, and we don't know whether in future there could be a similar organization for gas. And this could fragment global energy markets, and it might drive up prices and even spark competition among buyers in the regions like Asia and Europe for limited LNG supplies. So in the end, the EU will need to trade very carefully. Whatever they are doing, it should be a balancing act between staying true to its values and at the same time they should address the very real and immediate need to secure energy for its citizens. So meanwhile, Qatar's move serves as a stark reminder of the complex interplay between sustainability and then geopolitics in today's energy landscape.
Well, that was very well explained, Sandesh. And to set the stage, Qatar has been a lifeline for Europe's LNG needs, supplying around 12 to 14% of the EU's imports since the Russian invasion of Ukraine disrupted energy flows. So, in concrete terms, that's around 37 million metric tons of LNG out of a total of 281 million metric tons imported by the EU. So, losing Qatar as a supplier could cause a significant supply crunch, and especially as Europe struggles to diversify these energy sources. So, do you think this could escalate into a larger energy crisis for Europe?
Absolutely, Shruti. The possibility of a larger energy crisis for Europe, it can't be ruled out. And here is why this situation is particularly precarious. You know, the Qatar's energy minister, Saad Al Kabi, on a platform, he said, I am not bluffing. And you know, when you have an energy minister saying such a statement, that's a bold statement. And it underscores just how seriously Qatar views the implications of EU's corporate sustainability due diligence directive. Now, let's look at the law at the center of this conflict. You know, the EU's directive is groundbreaking in its aim to eliminate forced labor and environmental harm from supply chains. But here is the kicker. The penalties for non-compliance are hefty. They will be up to 5% of company's global turnover. I'm just starting to laugh right now. For Qatar Energy, they contribute around $51.64 billion. So you have a $52 billion revenue. And if you have been imposed with the 5% penalties, it will be a $2.5 billion annually. And you know, this is money that government sees as it should be belong to Qatari people. Qatari people should have access to this particular money because why they want to give such a large amount to the EU. So from Qatar's perspective, this is not just about financial penalties. So we know that they have a massive revenue, but it's all about the sovereignty and the precedent this law sets. Because Minister Kabi made it clear that while Qatar will honor its existing contract with the major European energy players like Shell, they won't hesitate to halt future supplies or explore legal avenues if these fines came into play. And who can blame them? No nation wants to feel coerced into compliance with external regulations that could impact its bottom line and governance. And Shruti, if Qatar follows through on this threat, Europe could face a perfect storm because the continent's energy infrastructure is already under strain because they were transitioning to greener alternatives and at the same time the Russian gas imports they were not there. But the alternative suppliers like US and Australia or even Nigeria, they can step in, but ramping up production and shipping LNG across such vast distances, it takes time. Logistics and even the higher cost is also included there. So Europe could see increased competition with Asia where demand for LNG is soaring and it is driving prices even higher. But at the same time, let's not ignore the geopolitical ripple effects because Qatar's stance isn't just a message to Europe, it's a global statement. And you should know that Qatar is allied to Iran. Okay, they were kind of mediators between different organizations. Those are part of Iran's network. So by taking this hardline stance, Qatar is trying to position themselves as a key player and they kind of unafraid to leverage its resources in high stake negotiations. And this move could embolden other energy exporters to push back against Western's regulations and potentially fracturing the global energy market. So for Europe, this situation highlights the fine line between pursuing its ambitious sustainability goal and ensuring energy security. Both are these things are critical, but timing is worse, which I have explained already. So Europeans, they should carefully reassess this directive, and because it could jeopardize the critical partnership. And in the end, Shruti, this isn't just about gas or sustainability. It's about how the world manages the transition to cleaner energy.
So, Sandesh, from what I understand here, to strike a balance between sustainability and energy security in such scenarios, the EU needs to take a pragmatic and phased approach. But what lessons can other regions learn from this standoff?
Shruti, this is the crux of the matter. So, first, balancing sustainability with the energy security. One of the most challenging dilemmas faced by policymakers today. So, the EU's corporate sustainability and then the due diligence directive is undeniably ambitious, and it seeks to promote ethical supply chains and reduce environmental harm. But it advantageously puts the region's energy security at risk, and I will tell you why. There are three such, you can say, method or approach there. So first one should be the directive enforcement mechanisms, and because they could revise to consider regional dependencies on critical suppliers like Qatar. So for instance, while ensuring adherence to sustainability practices, a grace period or tailored exemptions should be given because it might help them to avoid sudden disruptions. So initially there should be provisions and exemptions. It might help them, let's say for 1 year or 2 year. Then from third year onwards, they should start implementing, and initially they could set up about 1% or such kind of a mechanism should be implemented. And the other thing they have to do is personal negotiations, because dialogue is a key, and you must engage with Qatar and other major suppliers in collaborative discussions. And it aligns on a realistic timelines, and it kind of helps to implement strategies. So if they both have to come on the same page, they have to negotiate, they have to discuss, and then form such a policy that will be a win-win situation for both of them. Second, the diversification of energy sources. So, EU is kind of a majorly leaning towards one single supplier. And right now, they need to change, or they need to diversify that strategy, because now, right now, they don't have access to Russia. They have access, but they don't want to get into that access. But at the same time, they are more relied on Qatar for their energy resources. So it is a vital for Europe to continue to explore partnership with LNG exporters other than Qatar, such as US, Australia, and even some of the emerging players such as Mozambique. And the third one is, transparency and collaboration. When EU made this directive or made this policy, they have not asked anyone other than their EU members. Rather than penalizing the suppliers outright, the EU could establish kind of a joint programs. So let's imagine a scenario where European expertise funding support the greening of Qatar's energy operations, and this creates a win-win situation, enhancing both compliance and supply stability. So now for the lessons this standoff offers other regions, several takeaways. So one is holistic policy making. So policy should be, in the layman terms, the sustainability goals should be there, but it should also come with energy security and economic stability. The policies that alienate key partners, they can backfire, and especially in the regions that is dependent on energy imports. The second one is multilateral engagement. So energy is a global issue, and it's not dependent on either EU or Qatar. Today there is EU, there is Qatar. Tomorrow there will be India, China, and from the exporters' point of view, there could be Indonesia or even Nigeria or even USA. So this kind of unilateral disruptions that can disrupt entire energy market. So again, what regions should do, they should adopt a multilateral approach, bring all stakeholders together. That's the only thing they have to do. So the third one is proactive risk mitigation. You are into energy business, so you have to mitigate the risk at all cost. So how you mitigate those risks? Diversify your imports. Investment should increase in a alternate energy. So finally, Shruti, this situation underscores the need for broader conversation about the global energy transition. It's not just about reducing carbon emissions or ethical supply chain. It's all about ensuring that no region or community or industry is left behind. And achieving that balance is the true test of leadership in these complex times. So that's it from my side. I was very enthusiastic about this specific topic about Qatar, and it was great to discuss with you because it's a critical issue ultimately. And when we have a global energy and critical issue, we should be having high priority for discussing with each other, and we'll have our stance there for our audience.
Well, Sandesh, I'm also on the same page. And you're right, today's discussion has been incredibly enlightening. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in today. Stay tuned for our next episode. We'll explore more such topics and the evolving world of energy and shipping. We request our audience to follow us on different social media platforms such as LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and X. Until next time, stay tuned and navigate safely.